This is an emergency transmission. Citizens of the world, please, make no mistake. The zombie apocalypse is near. Will you cower and hide, or join us and fight? We are Dezombified, so stay on point and watch your six.
Debbie Taggart, Michael Mangini, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Hello from Pennsylvania. I think Rick or Brian Tucker, good to see you, buddy. Sock Goblin, amazing WTF. I love that name. This is going on through the chat. A bunch of people in here, a bunch of active people in here. Appreciate everybody coming over. And this is episode 2. This is going to be a regular thing. Brian Tucker, hey there, buddy. Hey, your ex is here. Not my ex, your ex. Good name. I like that. I think David S. Bingman. Good to see you here, too. Now, join me tonight. If you were on her stream earlier, Gemma Jade, my partner in crime, the other half, the better half of some of my shows. Gemma is joining us tonight. And probably going forward, she was supposed to come last time, but I wasn't able to make it because of a family issue. So I work better with a team. I'm the Clyde to, or the she's Bonnie to my Clyde, something like that. Hey there, Gothic Rose. I almost said I'm the Bonnie to your Clyde, but that didn't sound.
You can be that. You can be that.
Yeah, it's the 21st century. I can identify.
Thank you so much
bank robber.
For having me Dezombified. I'm really excited about this.
The lovely and talented Miss Gemma Jade. She's the head writer over on Missing Persons and Mysteries. There's nobody I would rather have put words in my mouth than Gemma Jade. She's written some scripts that are just the last several that you've done. I think every one of them have just been grand slam home runs out of the park. 20, 30, 40, 50,000 views just in a few days. So appreciate that. You're good at what you do, and I'm glad that you're part of my little circle here, and glad to have you over here with us on Dezombified.
Thank you, sir. So
how's your St. Patrick's Day going? Did you eat your corned beef and cabbage?
I did not eat it yet, but I'm going to eat it tomorrow at my sister's because I was too lazy to make one. I have to do the cooking in my house, okay?
I made it. Got robbed on the price, though. I'd forgot to order it the last time I got my Instacart delivery, so I thought yesterday, I'll go ahead and order it. They jacked the price up like $8 because it was the day before.
Of course. I hope everyone else is having a good St. Patrick's Day.
Mulder loves it. He loves the corned beef, which I like it on bread with make sandwiches. He's not so big on the cabbage. I'm going to take that out of the slow cooker and fry it anyway. I like it that way. But anyway, enough of that. Real reason we are here, episode 2 of Real Evil. Now, last week I posed this question to you, gave you a week to think about it. Layla, Gaz, John, good to see you there. I hope Dylan is with you tonight. You'd asked me to shout out your son Dylan, but you'd gone in the comments.
Yes.
Rather than on the live chat. So sorry we missed Dylan, but hopefully he's listening now. Good to have you with us. All right. I posed the question last week. Can a person be born evil? And I've given you a week to think about that. I think they can. Gemma, what's your take on that? Can a person be born evil?
Oh, man, I have this is actually the best subject for me to be on here doing with you tonight, Steve, because I've been watching so many documentaries lately that are posing this question, and there's so much research behind it. And I was saying earlier that it's like I always thought, yes, someone could be born evil. Like, no question about it, absolutely. But now that I'm watching both sides, like watching each side of the debate, I really can't decide yet. I need more information. I need more facts and evidence. I need more research. But what we're going to be talking about tonight really makes me want to go back to just saying, yes, absolutely you can, because I can't imagine how else something like this could happen. To be honest, I can't.
Yeah. Now there's been lots of cases in history of children that were evil. There was a film, very popular film for its time, came out in 1956, called The Bad Seed, and it was about an evil little girl who wanted a penmanship medal, really, really bad enough to kill for it. And if you've never seen the original of The Bad Seed, it is. I saw it when I was a child. Saw it on the Late Late Show. Stayed up and watched it. Directed by Mervyn LeRoy, and just a wonderful, wonderful story. Patty McCormick plays the lead. I met her as an adult. She said that role probably messed her up for life, but she was brilliant in that. And it was she got I think she was nominated for Academy Award in a supporting role. But anyway, what do you think there? What is, as far as now? I know you mentioned nature versus nurture.
Right.
Where do you think it stands on that?
The nature versus nurture thing for me, it's just, again, it's another thing I go back and forth. But when speaking about Mary Bell, right, if you look into, what happened there, it was something so simple as wanting a penmanship award and not wanting to practice the penmanship, that whole I want it now kind of thing. And I'm a daddy's girl. I was raised that way, and I still am that way sometimes with the foot stomp. But that's a foot stomp, and a mouth pout. So people are saying in the chat, yes, psychopaths are born. So yes, people can be born evil. But I mean, I'm not really sure if I know that for a fact either. I came across
part of the times I agree with that, and then other times I don't know. Now, last week I talked about Albert Fish. I know he's one of your favorite people, and Jeffrey Dahmer. Fish, I believe he was just pure evil. I believe he was
absolutely
a demon from hell, and that'd be his good points. And as far as Dahmer, I think he became that way over time. I don't think he was necessarily born evil. But now Mary Bell, she was born the year after the film The Bad Seed came out. She was born in 1957 to an unwed, mentally unstable mother, which a lot of people, and her mother was basically only a child too, 17 when she had her. A lot of people will point at that and say, oh, well, try to shame the mother. She was unwed. She was mentally unstable herself. She shouldn't have had a kid when she was just a kid herself. But I don't think that necessarily causes bad kids. I think it can be environmental. I think it can be any number of things, but some kids I think just turn out bad no matter what. I mean, you have privileged children like Leopold and Loeb, a very famous murder case back in the 1930s, who were from very wealthy high society, but they saw themselves as sort of supermen who, because of their wealth and position, or at least of that of their parents, that they should be above the law, and they thought that they could kill and get away with it. And they killed Bobby Franks, but they caught him and sent him to trial. I don't think either one of them.
Affluenza.
Yeah, absolutely. But Mary, her cruel urges easy for me to say, surfaced on May the 11th, 1968, when Mary and one of her playmates in her neighborhood there in Newcastle, England, UK, Norma Bell, who was no relation, they were playing with a 3-year-old boy on top of a Newcastle air raid shelter. The boy fell and was severely injured, but the incident was written off as accidental. On May 12th, the mothers of 3 young girls informed police that Mary had attacked and choked their children. When she was interviewed and lectured by authorities, she denied it, basically, and no juvenile charges were filed. Now, there's a lot more to that story. Let me scroll down here to the other part that I've got here. And this is a quote from Mary Bell. She eventually murdered a little boy named Brian, also with the help of her friend. And she quote, Brian Howe, which was the little boy's name, had no mother, so he won't be missed. And she'd actually said to Brian's sister, are you looking for Brian? The sister Pat was worried about the missing toddler who should have been home. Little 3-year-old boy with fair hair. Brian Howe usually played close to home. Mary and her best friend Norma eagerly offered to help search for him. They led Pat through the neighborhood, looking here and there, all the while knowing exactly where Brian was. They crossed the railroad tracks to the industrial area where the kids of Scotswold, which was the neighborhood in Newcastle that they lived in, often played among construction materials, old cars, and dangerous wreckage. Remember, a lot of the places in the UK that were bombed during the Blitz and still hadn't recovered and never built back at that time in the 50s. Pat, Brian's sister, was worried. Only a few weeks ago, little Martin Brown was found dead inside of a condemned house. Mary pointed to some large concrete blocks and said, he's playing behind those blocks, between them. Oh, he never goes there, insisted Norma. In fact, Brian lay dead between the blocks just where Mary had pointed. She had wanted her sister to discover the body, Norma later confessed, because she wanted Pat Howe to have a shock. Pat decided to leave. The Newcastle police would find his body at 11:10 that night. Now again, what would possess two little girls? And I'm sure Mary was probably the ringleader, but Nora went right along with her. Maybe she was afraid of Mary. I mean, we're in an area of conjecture here. But they all went along with it. And
well, Norma, from what I gathered, was a very unpopular and insecure little girl. And I found this just to kind of go back into the nurture nature thing here. It says, the debate of nurture versus nature has been going around and around for many years. This debate questions the amount to which certain traits are a product of either inherited, like genetic, or acquired, like learned, characteristics. Nature can be defined as the pre-wiring and is influenced by genetic and biological factors. Nurture is commonly taken as the influence of external factors after birth, like exposure, experience, and learning. This explanation is often used to figure out if people can truly be born evil. Now, Mary Bell's mother having been mentally ill or having mental illness, could that have played a factor to make Mary Bell a bit mentally ill? I, in looking into this case, do not believe it. Aside from the evilness, she seemed very smart for her age. I mean, she still was a little kid, basically leading everyone to her with her suspicious behavior. Yeah. But she was very smart and kind of sophisticated for her age, and she knew exactly which kid to go after to not only murder, but to get as her sidekick. She definitely played on Norma Bell, no relation, same last name. That was her accomplice. She definitely played on her insecurities, the fact that she did not have many, if any, friends, and the fact that she was a shy girl. So Mary could easily knew that she could boss her around. I'm 100% convinced of that in researching this case.
Yeah, and I agree. Sometimes there's a very fine line that you tread there between genius and insanity. And I think Mary was right there. I mean, she was wicked smart for her age. And her ability to lie and to manipulate and to, make everybody believe what she wanted them to believe until it finally caught up with her, got to the point that, there's just undeniable proof. But she was just, and this wasn't the first thing she did. I mean, she didn't just decide one day to murder kids. She was known throughout the neighborhood there where they lived in Scotswood as a thief, a vandal, She'd broken into the elementary school or the primary school with another girl on a couple of other occasions. Just a real delinquent, and it's at such a young age. I mean, this was all, she was only 11 when all this happened. She had been doing all these other things for years. And it was because of the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, she was, like you said, the ease with which she lied, and it just makes this question kills me because it makes me think like she had to have just been that way. But was she taught that by her mentally ill mother? Lying in the face of evidence is a psychopathic trait.
Yeah, and that's a very narcissistic thing. And again, and as an adult, she was quoted as saying, all that mattered was to lie well. So there you go. She knew even as a child that all she had to do was lie. But again, was that a learned behavior? Or did she come up with that on her own? Did she observe somebody? That's the part about her that we don't know. Now, when Brian was found, he was covered with grass and weeds. He'd been strangled. Nearby, they found a pair of broken scissors in the grass. There were puncture marks on his thighs, his lower region, and he had been partially skinned. Clumps of his hair had been cut away. The wounds were bizarre. The authorities said there was a terrible playfulness about it, a terrible gentleness, if you like, and somehow the playfulness of it made it even more terrifying rather than less, said Inspector James Dobson. Brian's belly had been signed M with a razor blade. This cut would not be apparent until days later. It appeared someone had imprinted an N, then a fourth mark was added by a different hand to change the N into an M. Summer 68, Scotswood, an economically depressed community 270 miles north of London, was in a state of panic. Police fled the community, interviewing kids between the ages of 3 and 15. The adults wondered if Martin Brown's accident, previous to this, was also murder. We were really nervous, said Martin's aunt, but the kids themselves felt it too. Now, when the police were going through and interviewing all these kids from 3 to 15, that's quite a stretch there.
Right.
I guess I don't think the 3-year-olds were suspects necessarily, but it's probably just to see if they had any information. But among the children who stood out as suspicious to the investigators were, no surprise here, 11-year-old Mary Bell and 13-year-old Norma Bell. Again, no relation. But they said that Mary was very evasive and acted strange, and Norma was excited by the murder. Members of one authority, now that's kind of weird, but says she was continually smiling as if it was a huge joke. You got something else to add in there before I continue?
Yes, on that note, many years ago, Professor Stanley Milgram researched how some people will harm others when asked to do so. Milgram concluded that humans are programmed to obey orders no matter what the order. However, some research suggests Milgram's conclusions were wrong. Were the participants causing harm to others because they were inherently evil, or were they influenced to carry out these acts because they believed they were participating in an experiment? This would justify their actions and make them happy to follow the order. But would they have acted differently outside of the experiment, so a flawed experiment? Nowadays, it could be said that in truth, hardly anyone accepts either of the extreme positions. There is evidence for both sides of the argument, which are inconsistent with all or nothing belief. It could be said that we are all born hardwired to be kind. And while help from our environment and background will help to improve this chance, some of our kindness is what we were born with. Both nature and nurture are always working together to influence all of our traits. That reminded me of Norma Bell when it said some people will harm others when asked to do so because humans are programmed to obey orders. I don't even know if that's true. I've got this from a health website where I just wanted to look up what's being said nowadays about the difference between nurture and nature. And even the experts don't know. But I do believe that Norma Bell was just as culpable and just as much of a psychopath as Mary Bell.
I think so. And even though she basically didn't get the same charges, she got off on part of it. But
I think it was because she didn't have the same reputation Mary had.
I think so. And Mary actually seemed to delight in it. And she first tried to lie her way out of it when the investigators kind of focused on her, she suddenly remembered seeing an 8-year-old boy from the neighborhood playing with Brian on the day he died, and she claimed that the boy had hit Brian for no reason, and she'd also seen him playing with broken scissors. But the boy she tried to pin it on had actually been at the airport on the afternoon Brian died. But by revealing she knew about these scissors, that was the linchpin. That was confidential evidence. So Mary had implicated herself, and she described them to a T, that they were silver colored, they were broken or bent. So it became clear that either Mary, Norma, or both had seen Brian die, and one of them was probably the killer. Now, Brian Howe was buried on August the 7th of 68. Detective Dobson was there, and he's quoted saying, "Mary Bell was standing in front of the house when the coffin was brought out. I was, of course, watching her. And it was when I saw her there that day, I knew I did not dare risk another day. She stood there laughing and rubbing her hands. I thought, my God, I've got to bring her in. She'll do another one."
It's unknown who her biological father was. For most of her life, she believed it was a man named Billy Bell, who was also a habitual criminal, who was arrested for armed robbery, even though she was already a baby when he married her mother. So she thought that the man who married her mother when she was little was her father, and he was a criminal, but that can't really be genetics. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't genetically related. So that makes me think right back to maybe it was nature. We don't know much about her home life. If her mother was mentally ill and very young, especially being a single, unwed, mentally ill teenage mother back in the day, right? That couldn't have been easy. And then marrying someone who's a habitual criminal, that's kind of both to me.
Yep, absolutely. And goes on here and talks about that before Brian's funeral, Dobson had questioned Norma again. She now claimed that Mary had told her she killed Brian and brought her to see the body at the blocks. Mary told Norma how she had done it exactly and how she'd squeezed his neck, and that was how she killed him. She told Norma to keep her nose dry and don't tell anyone. When she saw Brian, Norma knew he was dead right away, said his lips were purple. Mary ran her fingers along the purple lips and said she enjoyed it. It was that night that Norma was taken to the police station to give an official statement. This story shocked the police, who wasted no time in picking up Mary Bell, and shortly after midnight that night. Her intense blue eyes were bleary, it says, but she kept her wits. She appeared to see herself in sort of a cliche scenario of a cops and robbers film. Nothing surprised her, and she admitted nothing. Again, there's that cunning, that intelligence far beyond her years. She was playing a game. She knew exactly what she had done, and even though she was caught right in the middle of it, dead, red-handed, dead to rights, she just pretended, that it's a game. And they told her, they said, "We have reason to believe that you were near the blocks with Norma, where the body was found. A man shouted at some children who were nearby, and you both ran away from where Brian was lying in the grass. This man will probably recognize you." Well, she responded, "He would have to have good eyesight." "Why would he need good eyesight?" Dobson asked her, ready to catch her in a lie. "Because he was clever to see me when I wasn't there." She stood up. "I'm going home. This is being brainwashed." But Dobson wasn't about to let her go. At one point, Mary even asked, "Is this place bugged?" In the end, she refused to budge. Now, this is without any representation. She didn't have a barrister, an attorney, or anything. And she claimed at 11 years old, "I'm making no statements. I've made lots of statements. It's always me you come for. Norma's a liar. She always tries to get me into trouble." At 3:30 a.m., Mary was finally permitted to leave, Dobson second-guessing himself. But after seeing Mary's behavior at Brian's funeral and gathering additional testimony from Nora, he brought Mary back into the station. She was very apprehensive when the time brought back. She gave the impression that she knew the time of reckoning had come. Mary now admitted to being present when Brian died, but her confession took a bizarre turn. Now, again, she wrote this out and signed it, 11-year-old girl. "I, Mary Flora Bell, wish to make a statement. I want someone to write down what I have to say. I've been told that I need not say anything unless I wish to do so, but that whatever I say may be given in evidence." And then they took her to the statement, and she talked about how she had this long, drawn out story of how she and Norma had gone and saw the little boy playing on the blocks, and he'd fallen and hurt himself, and he began to cry, wouldn't stop crying, and she claimed that it was Norma that choked him, and then had shown Mary how to do it, and made her do it as well. And then it did have some partial truths in this statement, but it was a transparent attempt to blame Norma and shift all the blame from her. And just from the statement and the things that she knew that she wouldn't have had any other way of knowing, were she not culpable a part of it, Dobson formally charged Mary Bell with the murder of Brian Howe. That's all right with me, she replied. He then arrested Norma Bell, who in anger to the charge declared, I never. I'll pay you back for this, meaning to Mary. Put both girls are incarcerated at the Newcastle West End Police Station, and their upcoming trial attracted the attention of a fascinated yet horrified England at that time. So again,
that's just crazy with Norma. Do you know what I mean? I think she got off easy, that one.
Now, once they brought all this to light and had charged these two, then they started looking into some other strange, there was another strange death there, and children that were not killed but hurt. Now, the first little boy we talked about, Martin Brown, who was prior to the one that they had charged her with, they started to go back and look at that as a homicide. In fact, it was Mary Bell's behavior after Martin's death that was so flagrant they wondered how they hadn't caught it the first time. Perhaps Brian Howe's life would have been spared, but as one local boy said, everyone knew Mary was a show-off, and her screams of, I am a murderer, had simply been laughed at. She had bragged to the other children, don't mess with me, I'm a murderer. I've murdered, I'll murder you too.
Oh my gosh.
And even before Martin's death, there were other children that had been hurt by Mary. In May of that year, a 3-year-old boy was found behind some empty sheds near a pub, bleeding from the head. He was found by Norma and Mary Bell. The boy was a cousin of Mary's. He had fallen off a ledge, landing several feet below, but Mary later admitted having pushed him over the edge. Another time, they were playing with the nursery, and 3 little girls, were attacked by Mary with Norma nearby. One of the girls said that Mary put her hands around my neck and squeezed hard. Mary then took her hands off the girl's neck and did the same thing to Susan. Police were called. Norma stated that Mary went to the other girl and said, what happens if you choke someone? Do they die? Then Mary put both hands around the girl's neck and squeezed till the girl started to turn purple. And then Norma and Mary ran off.
Norma had claimed when she told the police that she ran off that day and left Mary there, and that she wasn't friends with her anymore, which was obviously a lie because they went on to kill together after that. So she was just, I get like agitated. I'm like Mary Bell got, the bad rap on this one, and Norma was just as bad. They're calling Mary the ringleader from everything I can see. I mean, even when other people that I've seen cover this case, it always goes that Mary is the ringleader and she's the one who was in control and she kind of coerced Norma. But from everything that I know, and even from what you're reading now, I'm reading right along with you, and it's like Norma, first of all, was older. From what I know, Norma was bigger. And it seems like she was just as much of a little liar and just as much of a, she just wasn't, she didn't have the same reputation going beforehand. And I don't know anything about her home life. I'm going to look now and see if I could find anything on Norma Bell. Were her parents together? So that means that she was looked on better by the community because, back then Mary would have been, from the minute she was born, looked badly by the community. Maybe
she was even the smarter of the two and was able to turn it all around and make it look like Mary, who was smart but not smart enough, maybe.
That's what it looked like to me.
Kind of a new revelation there. I'm going to pursue that angle with you in research and see what we can find out. Getting back to Martin, he'd been seen at approximately 3:15 the day that he was found dead and discovered at 3:30 lying on the floor of a boarded-up house. 3 boys were foraging for some scrap wood and found him on his back next to a window with blood and saliva trickling down the cheek and chin. Panicked, they called out to some construction workers outside, who remembered giving little Martin some biscuits earlier that day. They raced up the stairs and tried to revive him, but he was already dead. And one of the boys noticed Mary Bell and a friend coming toward the house and stopped directly below the window. "Shall we go up?" said Mary. They squeezed through boards to get inside. Mary had been here before and brought Norma to show her that she had killed Martin, but they were told to go away. The girls then went to Martin's aunt to tell her that there had been a horrible accident, and they thought it was Martin and that there was blood all over. "And we'll show you where it is," Mary had said to the distraught woman. Strangely, the police could not find any sign of violence. There was an empty bottle of aspirin nearby, and they were thinking perhaps he ate them all. There was no visible strangulation marks or any other marks on him. Therefore, the authorities believed his death was accidental, and the CID, or the Criminal Investigation Department, was not called in. Now, the official report on Martin Brown declared that the cause of death open, but the Scotswood community wouldn't let go of it after the other tragic death, so they marched and protested against the dangerous conditions of the condemned buildings in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, the true menace of Scotswood, menaces, Mary and Norma, were giving Martin's aunt the creeps with their prying questions. They kept asking me, "Do you miss Martin? Do you cry for him? Does June miss him?" Excuse me. And they were always grinning. In the end, I could stand it no more and told them to get out and to not come back. And this one really gives me chills. Martin's mother, June Brown, was also bothered by the girls. She heard a knock one day and opened the door to find Mary standing there. Mary smiled and asked to see Martin. I said, "No, pet. Martin is dead." She turned around and stared at me and said, "Oh, I know he's dead. I wanted to see him in his coffin."
Oh my gosh.
And she was still grinning. I was just as speechless that such a young child would want to see a dead baby, and I just slammed the door on her. Now, to me, to stand there smiling and say, "Oh, I know he's dead. I want to see him in his coffin," that's just cold-blooded. I mean, that gives me wanted to see him in his coffin. Wow.
Yeah, that's really, I don't know. This says here, at school, Mary was a troubled child, a chronic liar who voiced her desire to hurt people, displaying classic symptoms of psychopathy from a very early age. She was a bully, and her peers were afraid of her. Their mothers once reported to the police that Mary had attempted to choke their children, but police took no action. Despite her violent tendencies, Mary was intelligent and had one admirer, Norma Bell, a 13-year-old who was described as a bit dim and slow and not intellectually on par with Mary. I don't know. I think Norma Bell might have bamboozled everyone back then.
I'm wondering. I'm really.
I'm going to look more into it for sure.
And then there were these strange notes that they kept finding. There was a day nursery school on Woodlands Crescent at the end of White House Road that had been broken into and ransacked several times, and they found these strange notes. One note claimed, "Look out, there are murderers about." And then another, some of these I can't read just because of the language, but there was one that said, "I murder so that I may come back." Now that almost sounds demonic in nature, because I've heard of other killers, Son of Sam, for example, where they claimed, the Zodiac Killer was another, where they claimed that they were killing people so that they would have slaves in hell in the afterlife. So there's almost an occult factor to this at some point too, I think, where she's writing all these nasty and vulgar notes and threatening murder.
Let me tell you something. If, God forbid, somebody ever did something horrific, anything, to my 2.5-year-old, I don't care if you're 10, 11, 4, you come to my house asking to see my son in a coffin, and I put you right out of your misery and stop any other murders there's ever going to be again. I don't know how these people controlled themselves enough to look at this little girl with her smiling face. Oh my gosh. I picture it in my head, and I'm like, I will cut you. Like, Oh,
I can understand, a very small child not fully understanding the concept.
Right, I guess,
showing up, but standing there grinning. I want to see him in his coffin.
Right. It seemed very, it seems like exactly what it was. I can't think of the word right now, but it seemed very manipulative, very contrived, very just mean-spirited and on purpose, very purposeful, and that would not fly with me.
There was other incidents here of Mary, where she'd attacked Norma near the nursery sandpit, and a boy saw Mary scratch Norma and kick her in the eye, but only laughed when and started screaming, "I am a murderer," and then pointed in the direction of the house where Martin Brown was found and said, "That house over there, that's where I killed." And they said that she was well known as a show-off. They didn't take her ominous bragging seriously, but she even showed other people how she choked Martin Brown, other children. Later, Mary would quip, "Murder isn't that bad. We all die sometimes anyway."
I was just reading that.
It talks about where they took her to jail. There's one thing here that kind of caught my eye. It says Mary was a chronic bedwetter, was terrified of going to sleep for fear that she might mess her bed. Now, this is when she was in jail. But I wonder, for 11 years old and to still have your nieces there, I wonder if she, and I've never seen this mentioned, did she have any history of any type of abuse? Any type of
that's the first thing I thought of.
As soon as I saw the bedwetting part, I thought, I wonder if she was abused by somebody.
Yep, that's the first thing I thought, and not to, obviously, this is speculation, and as you said, it was never written anywhere. I've never seen it anywhere. Yeah. But, she was living in the house with a very violent, angry alcoholic who was a criminal, and, her mother was mentally unstable, so you don't know what went on. They don't talk enough about, in these older cases, I find it when I do my old-time criminals, stories, they don't talk enough about the home life in these cases because they didn't think it was relevant back then. Either you were bad or you were good, and that was it. It was cut and dry. I'd love to know Norma's home life. I'd love to know. I Googled it. I Binged it. I Yelped it. I cannot find anything about her home life. And that's really bothered me because I'm going to be doing some deep dive on this because I want to know about Norma Joyce Bell.
Yeah. Now, her mother, Betty Bell, supposedly was a prostitute at 17 when she became pregnant with Norma. And that was why she married Billy Bell, who says he was an armed robber and career criminal, which you touched on earlier. But, makes you wonder if somebody was abusing the daughter or if the mom was a prostitute, even if she was pimping out, a small child, which, that unfortunately happens sometimes in these cases.
And it happened back then too. It's just people didn't believe things like that. Like, in the 1930s with Bonnie and Clyde, she was able to get weapons into them because she was a pretty girl. And they were like, oh, a pretty girl is not going to bring weapons in here. You know what I mean? Women didn't even get arrested half the time. So,
well, and there's even speculation that was in the case of Lizzie Borden, that her father was abusing her and her sister, and the whole town knew about it. It was like an open secret that nobody talked about because he was wealthy. And then when she flew into a rage, finally had enough, and either one or both of them murdered their father, that's why there was 2 hung juries or inconclusive, whatever. They never charged her with anything because everybody knew what she was doing. So that makes perfect sense, in that regard. And for somebody as small as 11, and no telling how long, if she were abused, how long that abuse had been going on. So she obviously, this is her means of lashing out, of hurting other people, and fractured her mind. It even says here that she told one of the guards that she liked hurting little things that can't fight back. And that she said she'd like to be a nurse because then she can stick needles into people, and she likes hurting people. So again, something happened, something in her formative years, whether it was something, of a supernatural nature, and the devil made her do it, if you will, or if it was something that made her into this little psychopath.
Or something she was born with.
Again, yeah, indeed.
And there lies the eternal question. Dezombified me too, man.
Just it makes you wonder because you see kids playing some ways all the time. When my daughter was little, she built an electric chair with her Legos and strapped somebody into it and was talking about, now we're going to throw the switch.
Oh my gosh.
But at least it was from a procedural point. She was only punishing bad people. But again, isn't that what Dexter did? But she did go in, and now this is the part that's going to shock a lot of people, I think. She was declared not insane, but of diminished capacity, is what they like to say. It was given a charge of what they call the Queen's Pleasure, which means that basically they can decide what to do with her as they go along. She wasn't sentenced to death. She was sentenced to, found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to life imprisonment. And then, however, she spent 8 years in Young Offenders Institute and then transferred to Moore Court, which was a more open prison for her. She escaped with 2 boys in 77. But it went on. She actually walked out a free woman. And she has a daughter. And I read recently where she is a grandmother now. No, we're talking about Mary Bell here. So do you think that those few years in prison, and she was 23 when they released her. She was released May 14th, 1980, stayed in Suffolk. And believe it or not, her first job was in the local children's nursery. But then her probation officers decided that might not be the most appropriate work for her. She took waitress jobs and tried to attend university, but was just too discouraged to stick to it. She moved back in with her mother. She met a young man, became pregnant. Sounds like the cycle repeating itself here. Great concern over whether the woman who had murdered 2 children at least should be able to become a mother herself, yet she fought for the right to keep her child, which was born in 1984. Mary claims to have a new awareness of her crimes from the birth of her child. She was allowed to keep the child, who was technically a ward of the court, until 1982. If there was something wrong with me when I was a child, there wasn't now. I feel that if I could x-ray me inside, they could see that anything broken had been fixed, Mary insisted. Somehow, Mary Bell had made a transition without appropriate psychiatric treatment from a child killer to a loving mother. Her years in reform school and prison yielded sexual abuse and drug addiction, yet she claims to suddenly have a new moral consciousness and deep sorrow for her crimes. Now, how could this be possible? Now, there was a psychiatrist that wrote that there is a possibility of a metamorphosis, that Mary Bell had essentially become 2 people, the child and the adult, and that they were very different. And there was a furor when she was released. The villagers marched through the streets with the murderer out signs wanting her to leave town. So eventually they gave her a new identity and moved her to another part of England. So she, like I said, she's out there somewhere. And
I've got to say, I'm talking about it here in chat. When I was younger, at maybe around, I was, pretty neglected at, starting at like age 8 or whatever. And then like emotionally abused, verbally abused. And I was an honor roll student. I loved school. I loved homework. I read books for fun. I didn't have many friends to begin with. But what that did was put me more inside of myself. I was like embarrassed to go to school and, with all these things that were going on in my home life. And as I grew up, I've had a doctor say to me recently, you have one of the most introverted personalities I've ever seen in my entire practice. And
I've heard similar verbiage about myself.
But all this going on, I continued doing well in school and but it did put me very, very much inside myself. And I was just talking to KDA about that in the chat, that I do feel a little bit more towards nurture nurture in a way, because it's like, okay, once I got out of that situation, I started becoming a little bit more outgoing. But then I also think nature, because I was suffered through a lot, luckily no sexual abuse, but I suffered through so much at such a young age and at these formidable years. And I was still able to maintain, honor roll status at school. And I was still able to maintain friends if I chose to. But I was very, very socially awkward. I still am very socially awkward.
I hear you. That's why I do stuff like this. I'm good at this, but it's because I'm here in my room by myself behind a microphone. Yeah, I can do it in a room full of people, but it would cause me a lot more anxiety than I have here, obviously. They're talking in the chat there about the Menendez brothers. Yeah, I think Eric and Kyle were their names. They basically killed their parents because they wanted their money. But then they claim evidence
they were ridiculous,
sexually abused. And then they mentioned the Beltway snipers there. That's a fascinating case. Maybe we'll talk about that sometime.
Unfortunately, the sexual abuse thing, it's like today's trials, if you've seen the movie Chicago, that's what I feel like I'm watching sometimes, because look what happened with Casey Anthony. She was found not guilty because, the prosecution didn't prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. But why didn't they? because the jury and the courtroom were able to be distracted by this, Casey was abused by her father, which had nothing to do with anything, and it was allowed to be brought into the court, and it was allowed. So I feel like when I can't even watch these trials, I have to wait till they're over and watch the entire thing, because I get like real anxiety, because it's allowed to be this kind of, crap show all the time instead of focusing on the rules and the law. And, unfortunately, the victims are who get lost. The West Memphis Three. Yes, I understand they were innocent, but the real three are the kids. What are those kids' names? But I bet you can name at least one of the three of the accused.
Yeah.
I mean, I can name the little boys' names, but most people can't. Ted Bundy. Name two of Ted Bundy's victims? I mean, I can do it. I'm sure most of us can do it because of what we watch on YouTube or what we're interested in, but most people can't. Yeah, I'm guilty of it. I'm a fangirl Ted Bundy completely, but what about the victims?
Yeah, and you mentioned the West Memphis Three. That's one where, they decided they didn't do it, and they let them go with the Alfred plea or whatever they tried to get them to do there.
Which I think is the most ridiculous thing in the world.
Where they didn't say, well, you didn't do it, but we're going to let you go.
You can't sue us. That's what that's about.
Yeah, that's exactly.
We effed up really bad, and you can't sue us.
All that means is the boys that were killed, their killer is still out there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who it is, but
and energy, I have my opinions on that too. That'd be another good one to delve into. But that's the sad part. These
victims
kids
get lost
because of the way they looked and the books they read, and the music they listened to. That could have been me. I was older than them, but there was a time when I had long hair, dyed black. I listened to goth music. I read weird books. I mean, some of the books they accused, they read Stephen King books. All the horror.
Carl. I knew that was her.
Yeah, did she finally show up? Yes, she
Yeah, she said, I'm a fangirl for Steve and Gemma. Jenna.
Thank you, Carly. We appreciate that. Carl, she's a Florida woman.
Carl. Tarif.
I accidentally started something on the computer. But something you mentioned there gave me an idea for topic for the next show. How about mothers who kill? Now, there's your nature nurture thing again.
Matricide.
What do you think? Audience?
I could do that, definitely.
Would you like to hear an episode? Because when you mentioned Kaylee Anthony.
Oof.
And there's also Susan Smith. I can name you a dozen cases, but
there's way too many. I want to know what people think about Darlie Reuter. I love you too, Carl. I definitely want to know.
Love you too.
I want to talk about Darlie Reuter because I believe that she was innocent and she got a bad rap. But there are people out there that believe you cannot tell them anything, that Darlie Reuter was guilty. And I would really like to talk about her a little bit. That's something I'm working on for my channel. So I already have a lot of research into that.
Speaking of, if you haven't subscribed to Gemma Jade, go on over there. We're trying to get her to 1,000.
Yeah, please, guys. I need 1,000 so bad.
And we all know, any of you that has a channel know how hard that first 1,000 can take forever. It took me, I think I got my first 1,000 on 13 Past Midnight in about a year.
I'm coming up on a year next month.
And it took me about 13 months to get to the 4,000 watch hours. And now I don't even pay attention to it. I looked at it the other day, and I'm just a few away from 5,000.
I'm almost at the watch hours, though. But I'm almost at the watch hours.
I've seen it go either way. Usually one or the other you'll be deficient in.
I'm farther away from the subscribers than the watch hours. And I cover true crime. I've been delving more into the paranormal lately because, Bigfoot's mom isn't going to call me up yelling.
A couple of ones you've done recently that I really, really loved was the one about Indrid Cold.
Indrid Cold.
That was just shocking. And then the one about the person who may have been killed by shadow people. That one just knocks my socks off.
Did a witch send shadow people to kill Christopher Case? You guys have got to go over and check that out. That is a true story.
And shadow people, if you've ever seen shadow people, thought about shadow people, you need to watch that video.
And I've got it up on
Give you a link.
Patreon right now, but it's coming live either tomorrow or Friday, the Jersey Devil. Of course, I'm from New Jersey, born, raised, and I'm still here. And I love it, so I had to do my local legend.
So are you saying that you are part Jersey Devil?
I am part Jersey Devil, just the good part, just the good half.
That be the horns or the forked tail?
Both. Dun, dun, dun.
Keep quizzing you and I'll find out, right?
Pretty much.
Okay, let me drop a link to Gemma.
If you wouldn't mind, guys, if you can get over there. I know a lot of you, well, not a lot. Yeah, a lot of you are some of our regulars and you've already subbed. But if you haven't, go on, check it out. I think you'll like it. I think I do a pretty good job. And
logged in as you, Gemma Jade.
I do a lot of, oh yeah, you are logged in as me. I do a lot of deep dives, a lot longer videos, so.
If one of the mods can see that and okay it, or just put a link up to her channel, in particular that shadow
Are we
people
wrapping up?
video. I'm pretty much done at this point. I did 2 streams this morning and then our stream.
I don't know what time we started. That's the only reason I'm asking. It's not my bedtime. It's RJ's bedtime.
We're running up on an hour. But now next time, maybe we can start at the time we started your stream and do the whole 2 hours.
Yeah, I didn't know we were doing this tonight. Otherwise, I would not have done my stream. But
it was St. Patrick's Day and you wanted to do something for that. And I'd already agreed to Dezombified that I'd take Wednesdays. And then it didn't dawn on me till like Monday that, oh yeah, Wednesday is St. Patrick's Day. So I looked at the times real quick and I realized we had just enough time to do an hour on your channel and then run over here.
Well, so, Layla, that's because I did have someone's mom hit me up and really give me a talking to.
But, by the same token, we've had for
I've
Caleb.
Had way more. Yeah, way more. Caleb Smith. Yeah.
Caleb Smith's case, we've had his mother. She's contacted Gemma. We've had his sister show up in the chat over there and thank us for what we're doing or in the comments.
I speak to his mother almost on I wouldn't say a daily basis, but at least twice a week I speak to his mom.
Her cousin, or his cousin rather, has been in there. And that makes it all worthwhile to me. The family likes what we're doing. They're saying thank you for helping us get the name out there. We want justice for Caleb. And I don't want justice for Caleb and Keeslin too.
And Keeslin too. And Caleb's mother always talks about getting justice for Keeslin as well. She's an amazing, amazing woman. And I'm so glad that she's in my life. And she came into my life through my doing that video. I don't know. I want to go kind of maybe almost full-blown paranormal. I'm still going to cover some true crime. It's in my blood. It's in my bones. I love true crime. I've grown up with it, but I too have had the best sober St. Patrick's Day ever. That's why I wanted to do something for my channel. A lot of my subscribers were like, staying sober this year. I was like, oh, let's do something. So so next week we can do mothers that kill. I would love to see everyone's opinion on Darlie Router specifically.
We'll look forward to that. And yeah, to me, this even when I did party and stuff, New Year's Eve, St. Patrick's Day, I left that to the amateurs.
I was just going to say, I feel like that's like amateur hour,
It is. I mean, everybody goes out and makes ass themselves. Oh, no, that was the night I was content to sit home and do something else. Now, I've had to work around some of those things, like when I was in Las Vegas, but it just reinforces the fact that I'm glad that I don't take part in it.
All right, cool.
We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Yeah, the reason I'm logged in is Jim. I produced the stream over there for her, and that's why. But whoever's mods here, Mutant or KDA or Chris, if he's still here. Chris may not be a mod here. If you would drop a chat or drop a link in the chat for Gemma's channel. I put it in there, but I don't know if it showed up or not since I don't know if you're a mod here or not, Jim.
No.
Also, if you drop in a link for Missing Persons and Mysteries, we just passed 71,000 subs over there, but we're always happy to have more. Got some very, very special stuff coming up over there. So join us and be a part of it. I'm so happy that to be a partner on that channel. It's literally changed my life. Not just financially, but in a lot of different ways. But again, Layla, thanks for. I'm sorry we missed your comments at the time, but hello again to Dylan. We always
hello Dylan. If you come into the live chat, we will definitely do it right away. Thank you, the Boggs official.
Also, I want to say hi to my friend Chrissy. That's a man. He's in Birmingham, England. He's listening, but he's not in the chat. He's keeps messaging me on Facebook Messenger. He's a really great guy, and he likes to listen to my voice at night because he has anxiety, and I told him I would shout him out. So, Chrissy Price, my friend in Birmingham.
Hey, Chrissy.
Have a good evening, sir.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, Dezombified, for having me. I really enjoyed this. I can't wait to do another one. I love doing this, and it's always good to find like-minded people.
Yeah, the next one will be a little less disjointed. We'll have more time to go over everything.
To prepare,
stream beforehand. And then also tonight, join me on 13 past midnight at midnight Pacific time for Ghost Stories at midnight. Usually runs about 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10 hours. And a lot of classic ghost stories there from the likes of Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, M.R. James, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, lots of classic Victorian era ghost stories and horror stories. So join me over there for that. And also Morning Chill on KPNL Radio's YouTube channel. They've just kind of given me that whole YouTube channel to play with. And Morning Chill is kind of a chill hop, jazz hop, laid back kind of music show. And then also I engineer the feed for KPNL for Dave Scott's Spaced Out Radio. That comes on at 9 o'clock Pacific time. So join us over there. I'll be in the chat. And me helping Dave simulcast live from Canada out to Portland, Oregon here and beyond. All right. Again, thank you, everybody. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Show Dezombified some love for having us on here. We love them to death. Glad they gave us this platform to come on and talk about all the stuff we like to talk about. And there's nobody we'd rather talk about it with than you. Gemma, as always, thank you for being the other half, the better half.
Of course.
Somebody said we're the best duo in the business or something.
Whip, whip, crack, crack.
Yeah, please don't beat me again. I'm sorry. But no, somebody earlier when we first got on here said we're the best duo in the business or something.
Yes.
Like that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for the kudos. We appreciate that. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us. We are out of here. Whatever it is, wherever you are, have a good morning, good evening, good night, good day. I'm Steve Stockton. On behalf of Gemma Jade, we love everyone. Good night, everybody.